The April 7th, 2021 meeting of the Yarmouth Planning Board is about to convene. As a precautionary measure to reduce the spread of the coronavirus, this meeting will be held by remote participation. My name is Kathy Williams, and I'm the Yarmouth Town Planner and will be serving as moderator for this virtual meeting. I will now turn it over to the Planning Board Chair.
Welcome to the April 7th, 2021 Planning Board meeting. My name is Joanne Crowley, and I am the Chair of the Yarmouth Planning Board. I will begin by taking a roll call to establish a quorum. Brad Goodwin?
Present.
Liz Hartsgrove?
Present.
Susan Britta?
Present.
Tom Barron? No. Will Rubenstein? No. Chris Vincent?
Here.
Joanne Crowley? Present. With the quorum present, I'll call the meeting to order, and I'll ask Kathy, our moderator, to explain how remote participation will work for our meeting tonight.
Sure. Pursuant to Governor Baker's March 12, 2020 order suspending certain provisions of the open meeting law, this meeting of the Yarmouth Planning Board is being conducted via remote participation. No in-person attendance will be permitted, but every effort will be made to ensure that the public can adequately access and participate in the proceedings as provided for in the order. Persons who would like to view this meeting while in progress may do so by watching via this virtual meeting or the live feed on the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel. You may also listen to the meeting by dialing in to the number provided on the notice of meeting. The meeting will also be posted on the Town of Yarmouth YouTube channel for future viewing. Please be patient as we work to overcome any challenges with the virtual meeting. For all meetings, all audience participants enter the virtual meeting muted. Participants will be unmuted when called upon to speak by the chair or the moderator. If you are not speaking, please mute yourself to avoid unnecessary background noise. Do not use speakerphone or Bluetooth devices when speaking, and all votes must be roll call votes. For applicants and presenters, applicants can use the raise hand button or press *9 on their phone to identify themselves to the chair, and the moderator will unmute applicants when they are called upon to speak during their portion of the agenda. I see that we have two applicants in the attendees box this evening. Applicants shall identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation, and applications or presentations provided by the applicant will be displayed on the virtual meeting at the virtual meeting by the moderator, or for larger projects, temporary panelist capabilities may be given to the presenters to share their screens while giving their presentation. Regarding public comment, none of the items on the agenda this evening are public hearings that require a designated public comment period. However, public comment can be taken at the discretion of the chair. Members of the public may request to speak by selecting the raise hand button or pressing *9 on their phone and waiting for the chair to call on them. Members of the public recognized by the chair are asked to identify themselves by first and last name and affiliation for the public record and then provide their comment. I will now hand the meeting back over to the chair.
Thank you, Kathy. Welcome to any of our fellow members of the Yarmouth community, as well as our applicants this evening. First on our agenda is a request for approval not required, ANR Plan number 2558C. Cape Cod Council of Boy Scouts of America and Ralph and Donna Delmonico, 227 and 245 Pine Street, Yarmouthport, Mass. Approval not required, ANR Plan number 2558C, Assessors Map 105, Lot 6, 7, and 8.1. Purpose of this ANR is to adjust the lot line between among three parcels. This will allow for a safer entrance to Camp Greeno that provides some improved site distance. This ANR plan was previously approved by the Planning Board on October 7th, 2015, but was not recorded in the Barnstable Registry of Deeds within the required 6 months. The applicants are requesting us to endorse the plan again for recording purposes. I understand that there are representatives and or the applicants with us this evening, and I would like them to join us and offer any additional information for the board to consider tonight.
Good evening. My name is Mike Riley. I'm the Scout Executive or the Executive Director of the Cape Cod and Islands Council, Boy Scouts of America, Jones Camp Greeno. I think your description there pretty well summed up exactly why we're here. This was previously approved. Nothing has changed on the plan, and we want to get this boundary issue solved and get the plan recorded, and that brings us back to you tonight.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Riley. Are there any other representatives, Delmonicos, are they here?
No.
No. Okay. Any questions from the board for Mr. Riley? Yes, Susan Britta?
Mr. Riley, who was responsible for recording this now over at the courthouse? Is it you or Delmonico's? Who's responsible for actually changing the deed? So we don't miss the window this time.
I'll make sure that it gets done this time.
Thank you.
I'd also like to make a point that Will Rubenstein has joined us, Kathy, for the minute. Any other questions from members of the board? Okay, then may I please have a motion for the planning board to endorse A&R Plan number 2558C dated May 30th, 2015.
So moved.
Second,
I love a second, Madam Chair.
thank you. Take a roll. Any discussion? Roll call. Brad Goodwin,
Approve.
Chris Vincent,
Approve.
Liz Hartsgrove,
Aye.
Susan Britta,
Aye.
Will Rubenstein,
Aye.
Joanne Crowley, aye. The request is approved. Thank you, Mr. Riley, for joining us this evening. And good luck with the Registry of Deeds.
Thank you very much.
Hey,
We're going to need to do, Mike, just so you know, is I need to coordinate with Joanne so that she can come in and actually sign the Mylar. And when it's available, I'll give you a call to come and pick it up and we'll schedule a time.
Thanks again for joining us, Mike.
Thank you.
Second item on our agenda this evening is a lot release request, definitive subdivision number 2427B. This lot release request, definitive subdivision number 2427B, Easy Street, Yarmouthport, located off Summer Street. Request to release lots 1 and lots 3 from the covenant for the Easy Street subdivision. Lot 2, 24 Easy Street would remain under the covenant. I understand that SJD Investments, Mr. Sam Speakman, is the current owner. And Dan Ojala is here, I think, to join us if we have any questions with regard to this application. Is Dan with us tonight? Oh, hi, Dan. I didn't see you down there. Good evening.
Sure.
Thanks for joining us.
Sure. Whatever the pleasure, if you want Kathy to say something first, or I can just give you a
Okay,
brief introduction.
Kath?
Why don't you go ahead and give the brief overview and then if I need to add anything, I will.
Sure. For the record, my name is Dan Ojala. I'm a land surveyor and civil engineer with Down Cape Engineering in Yarmouthport. And we're the engineers of record on the Easy Street project. This is a project we started for the Realty Advisory Inc. And Sam Speakman ended up buying that from those folks, John, and has taken over. And of course, there's quite a litany of conditions and so forth. Sam is a good road builder in his own right. And so we watched him as he was out there. He did a great job, especially gravel compaction. A good job grading the shoulders, building that nice rock stone retaining wall along the side of the town property. He put in his own water main. He's a certified installer with the town of Yarmouth, so he worked with the water department to get the water in there. That's one of his specialties. They have now got all the documents together, I believe, to the satisfaction of the town for the various conditions. We're looking at a homeowners association type of an arrangement. There's a common driveway in the back, and the work is pretty complete. I hadn't been out there to check. He's doing a nice job. He's got good curb appeal. He actually did a little irrigation system and some loam and seed or sod on the west, and I think he was going to try and get his landscaper out there to clean up on the right as well. So it looks very nice. Nick had gone out. We did an as-built plan and profile, located all the drainage, utilities, dig safed it out. You'll get another bite at the apple here because we've got to do a little bit more work before the final release. But it didn't seem to make any sense to try and finish that common driveway and put in all the trees and so forth if we're going to be blowing it out to do work on either side. And of course, those trees will have to go in, and It would, so we've left it in binder on that common driveway, but it's just per plan, and the drainage system went in, and we drew up a drainage easement that captured all the drainage and reserve at the end of the road, and so it's in very good shape. I believe all the documents are in at least draft form, and it would be fine to have it be a condition that those be recorded, prior to Kathy actually handing out the releases or whatnot. But what we're looking for is a release of lot 1 and 3, and then would hold 2 in covenant. A lot of the times when you have a subdivision road, if you are absolutely complete with the roadway, we can ask for release of all of them. And if not, we would bond the amount of, work, maybe times a factor of 1.5 or something, to make sure that it gets done, and then release either all of the lots or generally. But in this case here, you can hold a lot under covenant. That's an extremely powerful tool. They can't sell it until you do. And I know he's turned down $400,000 a couple of times for that back lot. It's a very valuable piece of property. So there'll be no question that there's many times a factor of security for the remaining work that's to be done out there. And Sam is a good, responsible citizen. He's always good to his word, in my experience, and I have no doubt that he'll finish this up nicely and then ask for that release once those other 2 lots are completed. So that's the request, a release of 100 and 300, which is lots 3 and 1 respectively, and then you'll still hold lot number 2 under covenant until we've got the punch list finished of the few odds and ends that remain out there. So I'll be glad to answer any questions if you do have them.
Board members, any questions? Susan?
Just want to
Susan
confirm,
Britta?
the release of the second parcel will be tied to the punch list, Dan? Is that what you said?
Correct. Number 200 or lot 2 will remain under covenant, so no one can pull the building permit on it until we get the rest of the work done.
Thank you.
With the exception that, I would like to reserve the ability of, say it's mostly done, we could come back and bond the rest of the work if you want to get started on something,
Okay.
but for now, releasing the 2 lots is the request. And in my opinion, it's a pretty reasonable one with that kind of security behind it.
Okay. Kathy, did you want to add anything?
No, I do. I did send the planner report to Dan, so he seems to have read the fact that we would be looking for a copy of those documents that have been recorded at the registry before we actually give out the release. So there is a suggested motion in there. I think they have very little work to be done compared to the value of lot 2, so I don't have any problems with the releases.
Okay. So any other questions from the board? So may I please have a motion to approve the release of lot number 1, 11 Easy Street, and lot number 3, 16 Easy Street from the covenant for definitive subdivision plan number 2427B, with lot 2 remaining under the covenant, subject to receipt of copies of all legal documents duly recorded at the Barnstable Registry of Deeds.
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. Brad Goodwin,
Approve.
Chris Vincent,
Approved.
Liz Hartsgrove,
Aye.
Susan Britta,
Aye.
Will Rubenstein,
Aye.
Joanne Crowley, aye. Thank you so much, Dan, for joining us this evening. We appreciate it.
Thank you very much for your time and consideration. Thank you.
Do you have any idea when he'll be recording those at the registry, Dan?
No, but he's anxious to get the lots released, so I'm sure he'll do it, if not this week, early next.
Excellent. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, next up on our agenda is further discussion on our visioning plan. And once again, I don't think there are any members of the public who may be joining us, but they may tune in at some other point. Again, thanks for your participation in this as we go through this. So tonight we're going to review a couple of draft documents that Kathy has put together, outlining an initial framework for discussing the key programmatic elements of the plan. And I'd like to just start by doing what I'd like to call a kind of a 10,000-foot flyover and get a general consensus from the board of I think there are 10 programmatic areas that Kathy has outlined that are driven by what we heard from our constituents, what we know to be important program elements in the town, and that further overlap with those requirements that the RPP will require as part of our local comprehensive plan. So all of those kinds of programmatic areas, we need to make sure we touch base. And I think Kathy's done a fine job of organizing these into these large elements. But I just want to go through each one of them and get some sense from all of you whether we need to consolidate some. Kathy has one in particular she added on as relates to public health. And then she and I had a further discussion prior to this meeting about the possibility of including one that relates to infrastructure investment and renewal. So I'd like to just get some sense from the board about the large categories. Remember, they are water and environmental, open space, natural areas, recreation, transportation, climate resiliency, community character, economy, housing, municipal services, and then the two that I mentioned before. So who would like to start?
And then I'll start. If you want to.
Roberta, thank you.
The only, in terms of consolidation, I do think there's an opportunity maybe to consolidate the water, the open space, and possibly climate resiliency, but maybe not that. That would be the last one. But I do think maybe water and open space could be consolidated under a broader heading called environment, and then maybe two subheadings that would do water and then open space. I think the vision statement for each one of those is good, but I think an overall arching category could be environment and then have two subcategories underneath that. That might be a little easier to read and it might capture everything under environment. That's just, I just was, because I have tons of comments on, but in terms of consolidation, I think those two may be able to consolidate. I don't know if we'd lose anything, but I think that might be an opportunity to consolidate.
Okay.
I agree with Kathy. I think the public health is a good one. If we had to consolidate it at all, I would either do it under, we have a category here, municipal services, maybe municipal government, maybe have that as a subcategory under that. If the goal is to try to come up with a document that it will be attractive for the citizens to read and sort of capture their attention, for all of you that have worked in a bureaucracy, you know, the shorter the document, the easier it is to keep people, hold people's attention. But anyway, those are my comments.
Okay, great. So if I'm hearing under the first two, we would have a broader category that would be entitled environmental resources, and there would be water, open space, and natural areas.
I would just have the word environment, and then underneath it, you would have, I would have just environment, and then yes, water, and then the second bullet would be open space and natural areas.
Yeah. Okay.
Yep.
What are others? Kathy? Yeah.
I
What do
guess
you
my
think
only
about those?
comment is if we're just decreasing one of the headers and we're still having bullet items, are you really changing anything? Because if you're still having water as a bullet and then having open space and you're having those same information, I don't think you're saving a particular.
Well, I have eliminated some of the bullets to consolidate some of it, but I think the heading environment is a more accurate heading. I think it captures several of those ideas. Under the word environment, if people were looking, they would see, well, we consider environment to include water, to include open space. I just think it's a better heading, that's all.
Yes, Liz.
Yeah, I think there needs to be a separation between, Susan's right, there needs to be a separation between environmental issues and quality of life issues. So open space and recreation is more quality of life concerns as well as environmental, but I see recreation more a quality of life, because if you really put it down into like bare bones, you could unfortunately mesh them between the recreation department and beaches and municipal services. And what does that really mean? So when we're talking about recreation, we're talking about more the quality of life for people to go and enjoy our community. But then municipal services can go with infrastructure, public health, public safety, and all of those other departments within municipal services. I think that's really important to keep that under one branch, so we don't create silos in this document even.
Okay. So if I'm hearing the open space might sit better with recreation, that makes sense to me.
Yeah, I think just naming it, and it doesn't have to be quality of life. It could be something other than that, but I think it just needs to be like, kudos to Kathy. I mean, the word clouds, everything. It was really wonderful to see all of it. So thank you for all of your work to put this all together and give us a starting point. So thank you.
You're right. A lot of things could have gone under multiple categories, and that's the problem. And how do you formulate them? I did try and take a look a little bit, thinking back to the RPP. They have the natural systems, which is your water resources, the open space. And I think open space and rec, they kind of do go a little bit together, because we do have our own separate open space and rec plan. But if you look in the open space and rec plan, it has an awful lot about plants and wildlife and water quality. So all of those kinds of things, we're kind of thinking of being more of a natural system, whereas then you start getting into the built systems, and that's being more the transportation and the community design, and then the community systems, which is the cultural heritage, the economy, and the housing. And then I think we do end up having some stuff beyond what's in the RPP, which includes our municipal services, our public health, our education. Those are things that are important to us that aren't really covered in the RPP. The only comment I would make about infrastructure is underneath a lot. If you look through the different categories, I think you might find that the infrastructure kind of serves those main themes and not necessarily a theme unto itself, just another way of looking at it. So water resources, we could talk about our water infrastructure, our wastewater infrastructure. We could add something about our coastal infrastructure. Obviously, recreation, open space, we're talking about our recreation infrastructure, our conservation land, trails, and infrastructure. Transportation, right now we talk a little bit about roads, but we could add bridges and stormwater, in addition to sidewalks and bike paths, and having all of that be kind of that type of infrastructure. The climate could include energy infrastructure. We're kind of touching on that a little bit, because when you look in economy, we also talk about wastewater, and we also talk about broadband. So does infrastructure service these main themes, or is it a theme unto itself? So that's another way of looking at. After Joanne and I talked, I was thinking it was a great conversation we had, and it got a lot of juices flowing about different ways of looking at things. So that's another thing you guys might want to think about as well.
The one area I did want to touch on was which relates back to the infrastructure, Kathy, is the transportation category, because we really don't actually provide any transportation services. Maybe the senior center does,
Yeah,
I guess, to some small degree. But that really is all about transportation infrastructure. That's sidewalks, roadways, bridges. So maybe that's where we can work, instead of pulling it out. pulling all, especially the wastewater, I really want that to not get buried under the general category of infrastructure, because that is so much more important as an environmental issue, I think, and a water quality issue. So I'm thinking maybe it's more transportation infrastructure, because we don't really provide any mobility per se, services per se. So maybe that's where we can link up the Bass River Bridge, Four Corners intersection, the improvement at Parker's River, things like that.
I agree. I think, Joanne, though, the sidewalk component of it was really, I think we need to make sure that it's not lost, because we did hear that
We do that a lot.
getting a variation of ways for people to connect to services and get to places, whether it be the bike trail or in developing and increasing our sidewalks, and then the bike lanes on 28 and other locations. Those are things that we should not be forgetting. And it's a way that we're going to take our community up and, a whole nother notch for the next 20 years.
Maybe we do call it mobility then, rather than transportation.
No, I agree, though. The transportation, we don't provide any transportation services. That's the RTA, that's everybody else, the ferry systems and stuff like that. We don't do that. So,
Well, maybe it is that connectivity and mobility. That's
Maybe
exactly the
it
way
is
they had it
it's
originally.
more oriented towards improved mobility.
yeah.
Mobility and access. And Kathy, you've used the word connectivity, I think, in a couple of places. Maybe that's what we can reshape the transportation one as. That sounds good. That sounds good, Liz. Anyone else have some thoughts on these broader frameworks? So this is going to be kind of the starting point that we start to fill in, that Kathy will use as her building blocks here.
I have a question.
Yes, Will?
Hi. Sorry I was late. If I tried to spill something more intentionally, I could not have. That was not a very good use of English, but that's what
You had an
Okay, so-
accident? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, what'd you do?
there was just soda. It's not even healthy, but it doesn't matter. It has no calories, so it is healthy, but it's now cleaned up, but it was all over the kitchen at 5:27. So I am curious about the stuff that was highlighted in yellow under number 10, because I believe there were some questions there about should public health be on its own? And if you would rather, Madam Chair, me not take us in this direction right now and stay on where we were, I can.
No, we're on
Okay.
that now. That's one of
Okay.
the categories.
I just wanted to make sure. I kept sort of looking at number 9 and number 10, and I respect the word municipal, but man, I'm hung up on it. I say this respectfully to my friend Ms. Hartsgrove, the vice chair, but it's wonky. It is a wonky word. And that's where I kind of get lost, because the town has reorganized, as I recall, in the last couple of years under a community services sort of division, right? And so part of me is just thinking, well, could we try to match some of our thinking with the way the town is actually structured? And I'm not saying that the way the town is structured is right, but at the same time, unless we're not saying that, then why would we make it harder for ourselves? In other words, number 10 says public health. I could argue number 10 maybe should say community services. And then you would have, and again, it's just where we are now, Madam Chair, but we haven't even mentioned the schools yet, but we'll get to that. But we have library, we have seniors, we have recreation, we have Carl and DNR in there, and there's one more, and I always forget what it is.
Golf.
Seniors,
Golf.
Right. Thank you, Liz, for the interactive video. So we can all agree to disagree on whether those are the right 5, but we are operating in a town that uses this model. So that's why I think the question that whoever wrote it in bold is correct. I think we need to be very intentional with our words. So when I hear municipal, like my eyes glaze over, and I understand that that's like the inner workings of the guts of the town. But I would argue that number 10 should say community services, and that we can decide more as we go, because I'm also like struck, and I promise I'll stop my filibuster, Madam Chair, in just a second. But educational excellence and educational opportunities is listed under number 9, little c, number 6. What I find interesting, and again, it's because of our unique regional approach, shall we say, to schools in our town. If we did 10 bullet points in any other town, do you think that education would be one of them? Like, maybe not. But what I'm getting at is, I feel like we need to pull out some of the stuff that I would not consider municipal, Madam Chair. I would consider it community services. And so I would be pulling out the educational things. We could even have a reasonable discussion about recreation coming in under community services. But I understand that's a broader topic. So let me summarize. I think number 10 should be something about community services, Madam Chair. And I think we should be pulling out the bits in number 9, little c, little number 6. And we need to be a little more clear, in my opinion, about education and our strong school system. And that's sort of where my head is. I hope I haven't made it more complicated, because Brad Goodwin keeps rubbing his temples, so that always concerns me. But hopefully I didn't, Brad.
Okay.
Madam
Yeah.
Chair, did that make some sense by the time I ended my little speech? I don't know.
Were you putting education under community services? I just wanted to be clear.
Not necessarily, but I guess I don't know where it should go, but I found it odd that it was in municipal services. I understand it's sort of one of the prime directives of any town is to provide education of its citizens. It just struck me funny, Kathy. I don't know how else to say.
Yeah, no, as you can tell, as we got near the end, we kind of had everything bunched together, and I did put that highlight in because that's exactly what we were looking for.
I am so thankful, Kathy, that you attempted to, chunk this, as I like to say, into something, because otherwise, we could be here for hours. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Brad, did you have your hand raised?
I do, but Liz, you look like you got something more important to say. I'll go after you. Go ahead.
You see me itching. Yeah, so I actually do agree with Will on the schools. If you look at the word cloud, if we use that as the base of where we're going to emphasize, where the emphasized areas are that we heard back from those 400 and some survey participants, schools is one of the biggest words in that word cloud. Housing, businesses, water, traffic, so transportation and mobility. So if we use the word cloud as our guide, schools needs to be actually in one of its own categories, in my opinion, because you can branch it out with all different types of ages, whether it be any type of education being available. And we have the colleges here, as well as private schools, public schools, Catholic schools. We've got it all. So I think that should be in its own category. It is a very strong representative in our community.
So its own theme, like its own number
I think
11.
it needs to be its own number, yeah. And you can branch, community services is libraries, and again, that can go into the quality of life component of it. But I really do think if we keep within the 10 or even less, I think 10's a nice number. But I think schools really should have its own. It says it right there. We heard 400 and some people say that schools is important. So.
Brad?
I'm up for renewal at the end of July, so this is why
Whoa.
you may not want me on this board much longer. The reason is I'd boil it down to 3, because when we're doing things, I like to imagine a 3-legged stool. Everybody can picture a 3-legged stool. One leg is X, another is Y, another is Z. For me, it would be something like people in town want to know where they can work, play, and sleep. Is the housing okay? Can they get to work? Is there some place they can go to the beach or go whatever? It's really simple. And schools to me is some part of a town. It's like a given. Every town has to educate their young. It's a given. Every town has to. Every town does not have to provide waste hauling. So, but every town does have to do schools. So I'd like to boil it down to even simpler, because nothing's really going to be done in Yarmouth unless it's privately invested. The town doesn't have much more land it can share or move unless we're going to take over a golf course. And I don't see that happening because golf's a 4-letter word. So all being said, the reason we have a much better Shaw's Plaza is because Mr. Davenport decided to invest in it. The reason we have stoplights at exit 7 is because Home Depot wrote a massive check because they wanted to get through the Cape Cod Commission. Nothing really happens in this town because the government goes, you know, we're going to do this. So I think we should keep this more as a loose sweater that keeps everybody warm and cozy, but shouldn't really get that explicit because it's really down to the private investor and not really the town. The only place in town that I thought could really make a difference is doing something along the lines of the next time you build a plaza, you have to have some charging stations, something along those lines. That wouldn't have come up 20 years ago. It does now. 20 years ago, everybody wanted a library. Barely made a ripple this time. But there's some things I think we should keep this as a loose document and not burden yourself so much, or you're going to be here for another 3 years. So just be careful on how much minutia you want to put under these 10 things. I apologize, but this is my third bite at the apple, and I don't want you guys to kill yourselves and go bald and stress, especially staff going through this.
Oh, I appreciate that, Brad. I appreciate that. My one comment about education is, I agree with you, Will, from this perspective. We don't really feel like we have control over it, but almost, a third, 40% of our budget is for schools. So everyone in this town, for every 40 cents, for every buck they send in their tax bill, 40% of it is for the schools. So we would be, for it to be absent would be, I think, a tremendous oversight. I agree now that I'm thinking of it. The way I thought of it is before, that because of the minimum level of control we have over what they do, made it seem subservient. But maybe we should elevate it, and maybe we should say, you know what, as a town, we really do think that we need a bigger voice, and perhaps even get the DY Regional School District to comment and contribute to this in some way. Why not get them on the hook to make some promises? We're not restricted in that way, I don't think, from having them identify. I presume they have some kind of a strategic plan. Do they? Will, I'm looking at you.
They do. And I think it's fair to say that unfortunately, despite the unfortunate passing of Mr. Jenks, that, we're coming to a crossroads in the school system with breaking ground on the new 4, 5, 6, 7, intermediate middle school. And I think it's fair to say that our superintendent at some point is going to announce her retirement. So we do have some very large tectonic plates that are shifting in town while we are engaging in this process, Madam Chair. And they will also now probably start to embark, I'm going to guess maybe after the middle school opens, not till the middle of 22. So, but we're right on the edge of all of this, Madam Chair. I agree. And the fact that it seems weird that they would not be a part of this process is maybe the issue, because they are so much run as a separate fiefdom, and that is not anybody's fault. And that is the result of a lot of mishigas, as my grandmother would say. But the bottom line is, if you think about, like you said, 40% of our municipal budget, that cannot be ignored. And I agree with you also, Madam Chair, and the Madam Vice Chair that the educational perspective, it's broader than just K through 12.
Yeah, and it's broader than just public.
Yeah.
We have Catholic schools in town. We've got some private schools. We've got so we've got and homeschoolers for that matter. So if I may, since it's at my discretion, Will, could I ask you to look at this kind of format that Kathy's put together that has kind of vision, goals, and a series of objectives that you think from your experience, since you're our education guy, if you could just throw together an outline for Kathy to noodle with, and then we can noodle over it as well.
Sure, I'd be
Is that
happy
all
to.
right?
Do you have would you like me to have that ready for the next meeting or in between meetings? What would you?
What kind of time frame, Kathy?
Well, just, I mean, if you want to have it to prep and get the information out, sometime at the end of next week would be best.
And okay, technical question, Madam Chair. Am I allowed to draft something and send it via email, or is that considered deliberation?
That's deliberation. You should send it to Kathy.
Just to Kathy, but not to anybody
Kathy
else.
will send it to us.
Yes, if you send it to me, I can disseminate information. You guys
perfect.
just can't talk about the information.
No, there's no talking. Nobody's talking.
Yeah,
but,
I would include it as part of the packet, I
Yes,
guess is
yes,
my
ma'am.
point. So it would go to everybody.
Madam Chair, I will do that. Thank you for asking me.
Susan.
Joanne, I just want to make a couple of comments. One is, to me, education in this town is like the third rail of politics. It is a lot of people like to avoid talking about it because like everyone's got an education, everyone's got an opinion on how education should be run, and no two people ever agree. That's number one. So therefore, I would really not want to see this document become a document on schools. It still has to be a vision statement. It doesn't surprise me. In my 3 workshops, schools hardly came up. But when I think back to what Will has been saying about who actually participated and what did they, it doesn't surprise me that most of the people in my groups never mention schools or mention them very lightly because they don't have kids in the school system. So when I look back on it, yeah, that makes sense. That's not on their, that's not on their brain. But I do think, given the impact it has on the budget, I do think, Joanne, I think you're right. We have to have something in the vision statement about schools, even if it's something to say the governance of them or the participation, with the joining towns or something like that.
Yeah.
But I think we have to be very cautious about not having this become, like a review of the schools or some sort of policy statement about the schools. Because you're going to have 1,000 people who disagree with you. That's my only comment. It's like, Social Security, except in Yarmouth, it's schools. We have to be careful about what we say about schools because a lot of people just don't agree.
Right.
We saw it last year at the town meeting when there was a discussion about schools. And, you had it was like the Tet Offensive. It was just, people just don't agree. Because this is a vision statement and we need to keep it a vision statement. What do we want our schools to be? Whether it's governance, whether how we fund it, whatever.
Yep.
That's my only comment.
Okay. Thank you. Okay. Have any other comments about? Yes, Susan.
I had one more. Kathy, on the issue of housing, my only comment is, don't we have some sort of a quota or something that we're supposed to meet in terms of so many affordable units?
What it is according to Chapter 40B, we need to have, if you have 10% of your year-round housing is considered affordable,
Right.
You don't have to have a Chapter 40B project come to your town. You're kind of exempt from it.
Right.
But because we only have 5%, that means that people can come to our community through a 40B, which basically they can kind of supersede our zoning and
Right.
have higher densities, maybe not as nice aesthetics as we would like.
And we're still only at 5%, even with the two?
5%.
Okay, so should we, I don't know. I just thought this might be a little too broad if in fact we have a context with which we're dealing, which is this 10%. For example, it says objectives to promote the creation of more housing through planning and regulatory changes. I would somehow qualify that saying within the requirement or something like that, because that's kind of a broad statement.
I don't think we'll ever reach 10%, in all honesty. I think it's trying to provide as many, in my opinion, housing options and types that are generally affordable with the lower capital A, with the lower A versus a capital A, which is the deed restricted affordable housing. And that's kind of why, I threw in there some things about top of shop housing. And also I think that, the whole accessory dwelling units is still kind of simmering in the background. And I see this document as being a way to maybe help vet some of those ideas to see whether those are things that people are comfortable with. As you see in housing, we're also talking about the question that keeps coming back. And I know that Brad mentioned it at our last meeting, was the housing on Route 28. Is that something that you want to have more housing on Route 28, or do you not? Would you rather have, top of shop? So these might be some questions that, think along the lines, is this being kind of the bones of a survey, and kind of what information are we hoping to get from the public? We have a whole bunch of things that we're working on now. Maybe this can be a good check-in. Are we doing some of these things that you want us to do? A bunch of new ideas came out of the visioning, with regard to a town center and a community center. Let's vet some of those things a little bit further to kind of help set those priorities about what's important for our community. So it's this what process that we're working on now is much more than just a vision statement. This is actually going the next step and coming up with a general vision plan, which gives some ideas of how we might actually be meeting our vision.
Okay. So Kathy, do we have enough to on those broad categories, and any other comments?
My only question is, I think Liz was saying 10 sounds good, but what I'm hearing is we're actually going to have a community services and an education one, in addition to maybe it's town services instead of municipal, if we want to change some of the terminology. So is 11 okay?
I actually kind of liked Brad's suggestion of keeping it to 3 and then doing small. So you have the general topics of like live, work, and play, and then you have the subcategories where the 10 or 11 fall in somehow. So I think that was a really good suggestion, Brad. I liked it a lot. And I see Chris, we haven't heard from Chris at all. So I'm interested to hear what Chris has to say.
Live, work, play, educate. There you go. You're welcome.
So
But, keep it simple. Keep it simple.
what categories do you want things to go into?
You'll have to ask Brad.
I don't know. And it's if we're going to change the whole layout, and that's fine. I just need a lot more direction with regard to what we would want to see under each of those categories. Because you can put stuff, I mean, there's stuff here that other people might say, why did you put that over here? That should go over in this other section. It's very easy to move things around.
Right.
So let's do this. Let's just take a shot for 5 minutes. And we have 11 categories of things. I think we're all in agreement. Those are the major things that are in programmatic themes that we need to cover. I don't think we left any out. I think Kathy's done a good job of explaining what they mean, what they are, some examples of action items that fall under them. So if we have work, play, live, work, play, and educate. Let's start with work. What am I going to put a W next to?
Economy.
Economy.
And if
Okay.
you want to do anything on roads, people have to get to work. People have to
Mobility.
if you'd like.
Mobility.
People need adequate roads to get to buy something. They need adequate roads to shop. They need adequate roads to visit the town. That's, there you go.
Okay. Live.
That's all housing. Housing, housing, housing. People want, I don't think everybody deserves a right to live in Yarmouth. Lord knows I couldn't afford to move to this town now. I would have to live in Halifax or Carver and commute to work because I don't make enough money to move to Yarmouth. But Yarmouth has to have housing. It doesn't have to be affordable. It just has to have housing.
Good water
Um,
supply,
Exactly.
good police department,
Right.
Yeah.
fire department.
Right.
Yep.
So that's
Susan?
kind of a municipal under that.
For living, it's municipal? I'm sorry.
In a sense, you want a good police department. You want to, if you're going to live here, you want a good fire department.
Public
we don't-
safety and public health. Yeah.
But does that fall under the auspices of our document? That again, to me, is sort of like education. And again, I'm glad education's in, but every town has to protect their citizens from fire, theft, whatever. I'm just saying, is it a given?
Why do we need that distinction? Do you
Right.
think?
Why do we even have to put it in writing? Isn't it a given that when you move to Yarmouth, you're expected to pay taxes, and in return, we promise to have a fire department and a police department and things of that ilk?
It's just nice to pat yourself on the back when you're doing a good job, because every town has different varying degrees of services. So if ours is better than somebody else, we should point it out.
I do have to say that the police were top notch with regard to comments over
I
and
agree.
over and over again.
I agree, but isn't that a warm fuzzy we put on just as a cover letter, but not in the document itself?
Is it about quality though? Is it about the product that we're expecting from our community? I mean, you could say that though with almost anything, Brad, though. I'm not trying to debate you. I'm just trying to get where you're going on this. I mean, when
Well,
it comes down to it, it's just, we can have roads, infrastructure, we can have sidewalks, but what's our expectation of it? Do we want them to be handicapped accessible? Like, what is the level of quality that we're expecting for our community to reach?
Well,
So we can offer housing.
I've never, Chris, just went dark on us, but Chris has built housing before. I think private housing for people. But
Yeah.
I know if you build a road, you have to build roads to the code that we set. And that is if you're building a sidewalk, you have to meet certain standards. I think those standards are set by the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and maybe a higher standard in Yarmouth. But I look to Kathy, but again.
Agreed. But is it a set and forget, or is it something that, I don't know. That's the same thing with open space. That's the same thing with recreational programs. That's the same thing with beaches. That's the same thing. Like,
Yarmouth is built out. All we can do now is refine it. Yarmouth is built out. I mean,
Right, Brad.
20 years ago, we'd all be sitting on subdivisions and we'd be doing a lot more stuff than we're doing now.
Right.
That's why the last 10 acres that's coming up here and there around town is getting so much attention around not only Cape Cod, but around New England. 10 acre sites are not known on Cape Cod, let alone Yarmouth. So all we're doing here is refining. So
Okay.
I don't want
Yes,
to
Susan, you've been patient, Susan. Yes.
It also reinforces what something Kathy said earlier. Many of these topics can go into several categories. I just want to clarify, the conversation we just had about housing, that's when Brad's category is live, work, play, educate. That goes under the living component, right? Not the work component. Okay.
No, that's under the living. Yep.
That's what I thought. Okay. All right. And as long as we get if we are satisfied at the very end with where we've put our various topics and we can explain it, Kathy's right. Someone might come up and say, you shouldn't have put that under, play. It should have gone someplace else. If we can explain our logic, I mean, we're not in this to get a mark, or we're not getting paid for this. If we can explain our logic, we can explain our logic. Not everyone is going to agree with us, but as long as we get the topics in there and we can justify them, it's not as important where they are as long as they're there. And to Liz's point, some of these broader things go to the quality of life issue. So does that go under play? Does that go under living here? I would argue it goes under living here. But
Yeah.
someone's gonna say, no, the open space is really, and the bike trails, that's really a play issue. Okay, fine, take it, move it.
Maybe I set us off in the wrong direction here, because as I'm listening, the work, play, live, educate, quite frankly, those are words that probably should just sit in a vision statement and be the umbrella for all of these things. We don't necessarily have to force fit each of these programmatic areas into any one of them. In fact, all of these 10, 11 items, whatever number we come to, should in some way support living here, working here, playing here, and being educated here.
Exactly.
So
That's an
I will take back my suggestion of kind of force fitting a square into a circle here, and rather take Brad's advice that the kind of the overarching issue of statement here is about those 4 important words. And we use those to comprise and build upon a vision statement that these then programmatic areas all support.
Right.
And does that make sense to everyone?
It
So
does-
are you, Joanne, are you saying that we switch the headers to more of protect, preserve? I'm looking at repetitive words in the visions, that statements that of each category, and I'm seeing protect, preserve, promote,
Provide.
provide. I mean, if you look at those categories or words, is that what you're proposing? Is to protect our livelihoods, is to preserve our play and our environment?
That's not how I'm seeing
Okay, I'm just asking. I want to
No,
make sure.
I hadn't thought about how exactly to formulate a phrase that, but those 4 words, those 4 verbs, or verbs
That's
maybe.
really good because it's
Nouns.
action. Right?
Nouns, verbs.
No, I like the verb action.
Um,
Action.
what adjectives or adverbs we put in front of them, I hadn't thought, that's not, I haven't done that quite yet. Susan, help me.
I'm with Liz. I love the action. I like the verb. It's action. I would avoid adjectives at all costs because they cannot be, what is substantial to me is not substantial to Joanne. What is adequate to me is not adequate to Kathy. So I would avoid adjectives at all costs and stick with the action verbs. Those verbs provide, protect, preserve. Every one of those can be used under either live, work, play, or educate, or they can be used multiple times under those categories. For example, under play, preserve the open space, preserve the bike trails, protect the marshlands.
Yeah, and
That kind of thing. So, I like the action words. I like the verb, and I don't say, substantially protect. Forget adjectives. Just go with the action verb.
okay. And I think Kathy's got those words in the document that has more detail. It has not the adjectives, but has those important words: enrich, improve, protect, preserve. Those appear throughout
Right.
the more detailed document that has what I call action items underneath them. But I'm just trying to get a sense of how you would like to formulate the use of those 4 words as kind of our headline, if you will.
If I may, my
yes,
thoughts,
Chris.
when I think of living in a place, I think of, if I was going to go move someplace and live there, I would concern myself with, again, the fire department, your water quality, your water supply, those kind of things, right? If I'm just going to go someplace to work, I don't care about those. What do I care about? Being able to get there, get back, being able to go out to a restaurant and get something for
Right.
lunch, those kind of things, fill up with gas, those kind of things, right? If I'm just going someplace to visit, then I'm concerned about the beaches and the restaurants and those kind of events. So that's why I said municipal goes under living, because those are the concerns that I would have if I'm going to look at a place to live. It's different if I'm working someplace else, and it's different if I'm just going someplace to visit.
Okay.
Make sense?
Yep.
That's sort of the broad strokes. Again, you can really kill yourself with minutia if you want to try.
Trying hard.
You really can.
Well, we're gonna kill ourselves no matter what, because if we could get away with 4 words, I'd love to be able to get away with just 4 words, but I don't think that we're gonna make it. But you're right. People who just work here don't really care what our tax rate is, right? Yeah.
I don't care about our education
People
system.
that don't have kids in the schools.
Yeah.
Care about the school.
Well, then they do care about it when it
I'm being
affects their
slightly
tax
flip,
rate.
Madam Chair, but I mean, I'm just trying to connect those kinds of emotional dots.
Yeah. Yeah.
No, Chris is right. People that come.
And Chris, I'm sorry I interrupted you.
No, that's fine. I was through.
I did, like, initially when I first read through everything, I did start with a category of preservation, because there seemed to be so many things that we wanted to preserve. It was like preserving all of our traditions, preserving all of the special events that we have, preserving all of the wonderful recreation opportunities and all of the trails that we have. Because if you look at the strengths that we have, it's all about preserving all of those wonderful things that make, in many sense, is that quality of life that makes our community good. So there was preservation, but then where did you go after that? I mean, is it improvement? I mean, because we need to improve on things, or maybe we need to add things. So what was the next thing? So I ended up trying to consolidate in a slightly different way. So I understand, and I think that's why I ended up with a lot of those same verbs of preserve and protect and improve. But our water quality, we want to preserve what we have, but we also want to improve it, because right now it's not the greatest in certain areas. So it's
like
complex.
I like the preserve. I like protect. It goes with the public safety component of it, but also for our waterways, I like all of our infrastructure, like our wastewater, our environment and stuff, we're protecting it. Also then providing, and then it can actually be, what are we providing? You can say what kind of level of service we're for education, providing superior education, or providing superior infrastructure, or striving for that type of thing. I don't know, but I like Brad's stool idea, and then I like also Joanne's chair of 4 words and having a square foundation too. So I don't know, I like them.
Can I ask you,
Kathy, let me just ask you, how we also have to keep in mind the background of the Cape Cod Commission and the RPP, and kind of the thing we have to fit into. A local comprehensive plan has to have certain elements of it that address, there are regulatory requirements that plan has to address, and they're outlined by the commission, right? I mean, we can't avoid having certain categories of things. So we're going to have categories of things, which are what you've outlined here as the 10 or 11 items.
we've exceeded that. I mean, I think I tried to just keep it in the general. When I put them into the different places on the plan, it was trying to do the natural, the built, and then.
Right, but if you go beyond the natural built, and I forget the third one, but within those, even the natural and built,
Community.
these subcategories come right out. They're very similar. So I just want to remember that we need to make sure we address those regulatory requirements that the local comprehensive plan has to have to begin with. Yeah.
I do think, in the vision statement, you have the opportunity to talk about a lot of these things, and you can phrase it that way with regard to a community where everyone enjoys living and has an opportunity to work and has an opportunity to enjoy our natural environment and play. So you could incorporate that in. I guess if you're going to do something with the 3-stool, I guess I'd like a little bit more clarity on how you would envision that. Would it end up just being an overarching label, so to speak, a main theme, and then it would still have very similar things underneath it with regard to a separate vision under those? Or would it just be one giant vision for work, and then you would have a few things underneath that? So are we just moving things around, or are we consolidating, I guess is my question.
Both. I think we're doing both.
Then I would need a lot more guidance on how we would do that.
I mean, my feeling about the 4 words is that they are the elements of a vision statement. They're not necessarily categories, but they are the important cornerstones of a vision statement. And that's where I think they might fit best. Susan?
Kathy, what are the regulatory, you mentioned there are requirements that we have to have. I was unfamiliar with that notion. What are we required to have that we?
Well, I just think, I think just to kind of seamlessly move into the LCP, I mean, they're not going to make us be rigid. They want this to be a town of Yarmouth plan, a local comprehensive plan, not a crammed in RPP meeting the commissions. But they do have some general ideas. I don't think there's anything in there that's not something that we would have had anyway.
Okay.
It's about
protecting anything. Or
no. It's just the way they have it laid out is, our natural system, protecting water resources, ocean, wetlands, wildlife, and open space. And then it moves on to the built systems, our community design, our coastal resiliency, our infrastructure, transportation, energy, and waste management. And then it goes on to community, which is cultural heritage, economy, and housing goals. I think we have a lot more than that
Right.
that apply to the community systems.
And also at this point, this is a document we're trying to put together for the public. So going to Brad's point, keep it simple, stupid. We want people to get invested in this, understand it, and get invested in it. So I think the 4 legs of a chair, I would start with 4. We can always go down to 3. It's easier to reduce than it is to expand. So I'd start with 4. If we get into the conversation and we decide that education doesn't need, we can go to Brad's stool from Joanne's chair, and maybe incorporate education at some point later in the conversation. But I like the idea of keeping it fairly simple and easy to read and easy to understand as we launch phase 2 here, and continue to keep the public understanding what we're doing, have them vested in believing that what they said to us is reflected in the document. And then, we can enhance it. We can, I don't know, include a cover letter or something. But certainly Kathy's got enough material here. I've just been going, everything on here, I've already put under one of those 3 categories, and I've had a separate one for education. So I think we can do it. And I love the action verbs. I love promote, protect. It's almost like promote, protect, provide, and preserve. If we use those 4 Ps under each one of these categories, whether we use it under living, working, playing, or education, we get almost everything we have on these 10 pages. And we repeat those verbs over and over again. So they become like a mantra for our citizens. It becomes a mantra for the Board of Selectmen. Well, we decided to promote this. We're going to protect this. We're going to preserve this. And we're going to, I forget what the third, provide maybe some new initiatives. And I think we can get it all there.
Okay. I do want to move to this might be a good turning point to move to the second document Kathy provided to us that had a lot more detail, that had laid out kind of one-pagers on each one of these, and get your reactions and feedback on those. if you have them this evening. If not, Kathy will need them going forward, because this is the level of detail that we would like to make into a public document. I'm not misstating anything, Kathy, am I here? This level of detail will become, why don't you go ahead?
It's totally up to you guys on what level of detail you want to provide. You know, whether you just go to the objectives and you don't get into anything specific, I probably would change some of the objectives. So like for the water and environmental resources, I mean, improve, you know, maybe it's improving, I guess I would explain out some of the things underneath, like improving our water resources through municipal sewer or tidal restoration, or maintaining our water system. I would explain it out a little bit more versus just having a generic, because I don't think a lot of people might understand necessarily what improve and protect our water resources through infrastructure projects might mean.
What do we mean by that? When we say
Right.
that, what do we mean? I do think the detail below is important. Others, your thoughts on, this is on the larger document, the 13-page document, where each of the areas is outlined with the specifics of what I'm calling action items or projects. We need to think about what's in there and add our own important thoughts there about what we think should be included if there's more on these sheets. So I'm looking for any comments now. That's part of the reason Kathy sent out the supplementary note to see if we could tonight or have a deadline for comments back to Kathy, because we need to get this into production, so to speak, and to turn around something to get back out to everyone. I don't know that we want to use this time to wordsmith, but I need some feedback from all of you as to the general sentiments on each of these pages. So let's start with water and environmental resources. Kathy's listed out municipal wastewater, tidal restoration, municipal water, stormwater regulations, wetland regulations, drinking water, public education, land purchases, and wetland resources. Kathy?
I would only say other than things like the municipal wastewater and the fertilizer, those kind of came out of the visioning itself. The rest of these are things that are already in our local comprehensive plan, the updated sections. It's already in our open space and recreation plan. And whether we want to vet those a little bit further with the public or whether we don't.
I personally don't think that's necessary for this. I think that's for the local comprehensive plan and for the staff to determine what mechanisms and manners in using science and what's in relation to regulations and stuff. If we start narrowing the scope of what is allowed and what the definition of those things are, I think we're doing ourselves and our community a disservice for the next 20 years. So I think keeping it, again, here we go, keep it simple, stupid. Let's just keep this very simple. And then it offers an opportunity to broaden it for those other particular plans.
So would you change the objectives to reference those in any way, or would you leave the objectives generic?
I think leaving them generic, this is my opinion, and I am open to other people's opinions as well. But I think keeping it very generic and matching or just updating what we've had in the local comprehensive plan, if it complements what we heard from our community members in the last 6 months of exercise.
Okay, so there is a way, I think, Kathy, to maybe include some of the more detailed language in the objectives, and then just drop the individual items underneath. That's what you're suggesting, Liz, is the specifics of projects drop out. Just keep it at the highest level of the statement of objectives.
Yeah, I mean, the objectives, yes, like
Yeah.
if we're on water and environmental resources, those 3 objectives,
Yep.
I think it sums it up pretty well to me. But again, I'd like to hear from everyone else. So
Comments? I like the idea of keeping it at a higher level, like Liz.
Sure.
I think, Madam Chair, can you hear me okay?
Yep.
I had to go to the air traffic controller headset. It's not my preference, but sometimes duty calls. I agree that less is more, but I also recognize that less is literally more for Kathy, given I'm just trying to have a little grace for her because she came to us with a draft, with a starting point. And I just would love to make sure that no matter what comes out of this conversation tonight, we're not dumping something back onto her that then causes ripple effects that, you know, are not necessary, I guess is really what I would say. So hopefully whatever less is more we come up with doesn't mean more for Kathy. Does that make sense? I hope I'm coming across okay in that way.
I'll let Kathy answer that.
I think
Oh,
what-
geez. Now it's getting awkward. Okay.
No, I don't mind going less. I think but keep in mind that these are the kind of the things that the next survey is going to be asking. Do you want to be improving our water quality through infrastructure projects? We might want to have a little bit clearer with regard to what people like. Maybe it's just wastewater. Are you in support of wastewater? Because I don't think there's ever been like a information out there about that. So how that's worded is fine. The part that I think I'm having some difficulty with, just because I haven't quite wrapped my head around it, is changing the categories and putting certain things under each one. And then as Susan was saying, and then using those different words. So Susan made it sound like she had already put some stuff into different categories. So if you could send that to me, Susan, that might be a helpful starting point. And then I can use those 4 verbs and see how I can take what I have, the truncated version would be much easier, and insert it in that way. So, taking stuff out, I mean, we can always wordsmith the objectives later. I don't think that that's too hard.
Kathy, I did it with the summary, page 1, 2, 3, and 4. I'll reorganize that and send that to you. I have not touched the discussion ideas. You know,
That's fine, because the discussion ideas are just talking about the specifics, which we just said we wanted to take out,
okay,
right?
When do you need it, Kathy?
As soon as you can get it to me, because I need to start working on it. I don't have 3 weeks this time.
I'll work on it as soon as we finish.
Awesome, thank you.
Okay, so we reached consensus that the level of detail will avoid specifics. Kathy, that might make your life a little easier.
Yeah, no problem.
That's okay. And we just need to work a little bit on the live, work, play, educate. And any thoughts any of you have on how we incorporate that as either a headline and then these programmatic areas fall under it, or we try to allocate each of these programmatic areas into these categories? Need some feedback on that. But I think the categories that we've identified tonight, just to which we probably should just lock in on for you, Kathy, because I'm not sure it's clear about community services and municipal services and the like, right? On the 10, 11.
Yeah, I think,
because those then drive your one pagers that have vision, goals, and objectives on them.
right. It would be helpful. I mean, I don't know what Susan worked up, but I mean, each objective or each category may fit. I think when you get into municipal services, they may fit in different places because there's a lot of stuff under municipal services.
We did make the one suggestion that I think Liz had for the first one, that we would, no, Susan, I think, on environment.
I think it changes all around if you're doing, if you want to keep it simpler and you're doing the live, work, play. And then I think underneath each one, you'd have preserve, and it would be listing all the things in maybe 3 or 4 of these
Okay.
categories that you want to preserve and then
All right.
protect. And so
All right, so why
that's,
don't we?
does that sound like what you're looking for?
I think that let's try Susan's idea. I mean, I'm not, Brad, you're the, you initiated this whole idea. Come on. How would you see this shaping up?
I was going to suggest you and I get together over a coffee table and bang it out in an hour, but I think Susan's already ahead of it. It's simple. Again, we're trying to do a document that the selectmen are going to take and shape how they want to see it, because we work at the behest of the selectmen and then also the citizens. The biggest thing is, I'll give you an example in Harwich. They all wanted to have a community center. Everybody clamored in their visioning statement they wanted a community center. And then the selectmen in Harwich went to them and said, here's the cost. And all of a sudden that indoor swimming pool went away because nobody wanted to pay for the indoor swimming pool. So whatever we as a group want to do to put down and protect and provide and all the other great P's, which I think Susan is a great idea, especially getting its simplicity across. You also have to put the C in there as in cost. So that's going to hopefully whittle down people's wishes the next time we go through this. Are you willing to pay for it? That's where the rubber hits the road. So I like the way we're going. I'm glad we're trimming it down. But the big thing we have to do on the next vision statement is, are you willing to pay for it? And that's where a lot of people are going to say no. Okay.
Susan?
Brad, I totally agree with you. The only thing is, I don't think we have to answer that. That's a question the selectmen are going to ask. We're going to present them with the document, and then they're in turn going to say to the citizens, are you willing to pay for blah, blah?
Okay.
So
Somebody has, but I'm trying to save that step. That's sometimes if we ask now, because we're getting into education, which the planning board has nothing to do with. And then again, as Will said, it's an own little fiefdom. It's not even something we really control or talk about. But yeah, so that's up to FinCom and selectmen and the town administrators. But that's what I learned a lot from the Harwich example that I went through with the town, 10, 12 years ago, when they started the Harwich Community Center project.
Okay. Susan, Cassie.
At least you didn't call me Karen, so that's
Yeah. I sound like my father, Joan, Joanne, Denise. Oh, it's you. Oh, okay, Joanne.
It's always bad when you get the dog's name before yours.
Yeah, so thankfully we didn't have a dog.
Yeah, I got Brian yesterday on a New England sales call, and I've been with the company for 30 years. That was really good. Talk about job security.
I think I would like to maybe sit down and get some input from you, Brad. I mean, I think this was your general idea, and maybe getting a little more clarity on how you were seeing how things might go through and how we could narrow it down. Because as you know, I have trouble condensing. So I think, with your guidance and, with some information from Susan, maybe we can get a better idea of how we can do that.
Sure.
And anyone else? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
thank you, Chris, for jumping in on the educate piece. I think you're right. People come to town with different interests. Tourists come here for the beaches and Cape Cod Rail Trail and golf.
And a liquor
That's it.
store.
They don't care. They don't necessarily, in what?
And a liquor store.
And a liquor store. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I hadn't quite put those compartments quite like that, but you're absolutely right. Maybe that's the way. It's a better way to start thinking about it. So
Which we'll all be visiting on the ride home tonight.
Yeah.
Or I will. You guys are at home.
So are we in agreement? You've got enough to work with, Kathy? Are you satisfied with the outcome here?
I think I can give it a try, and we'll meet again and we'll take a look and we'll move stuff around and do whatever. I think the information is here. It sounds like we want to reposition it a little bit and condense it a little bit, which is what I'll work on.
Okay, great. And Brad, thank you for helping out as well with your
Oh, I
thoughts.
think
Keeping it
Sue,
simple
Will,
is a
and
good idea.
I think Sue, Will, and Chris and Elizabeth all had great ideas. They all did a great job. I'm just the old man sitting here going, guys, just keep it as loose as can be because it's gonna
You know, you
happen
can't-
again in a few years. That's all.
You gotta drop the old man bald card. You gotta drop that.
I'm just
Not
playing it
working
like it
anymore.
is. I'm just saying that you don't get too constrictive because it's gonna happen again in another few years. Don't kill yourselves. And Kathy.
Fair warning. I'll take it. Anyone else on this? I'd like to move on the agenda then. Next up are our minutes from March 17th. May I have a motion to accept the minutes of our March 17th, 2020 meeting?
I would love to make that motion for the
Thank
one of
you.
the very few times.
Thank you.
I'll second it
please.
because I like
Thank
being the
you.
second banana to Will.
Roll call. Susan Britta,
Aye.
Brad Goodwin,
Approve.
Liz Hartsgrove,
Aye.
Chris Vincent.
I think I'm gonna abstain on that one.
Yes,
No,
I'm
you-
sorry.
No,
Yes,
you were
will.
here.
Was
You
I
were
there?
here.
No, he was here for that one.
Holy cow.
Yes, I apologize. I apologize. Will Rubenstein,
Aye.
Joanne Crowley, aye. Thank you. Okay, Kathy, Zoning Board of Appeals, anything there?
Yeah, I talked to Sandy Clark. I haven't received any decisions in quite some time, so I don't know what the story is. So she's going to start checking into that and seeing if I can't get some decisions. I think I
Okay.
forwarded you the ZBA for tomorrow night. I only had one item on it.
Okay. I did ask Tom Barron on the side to just try to keep track of requests for accessory dwelling units. I think that, that's starting, I think, to jump up again, and there may be some interest or pressure for the zoning amendments that we, proposed before that didn't make it. So changes in that. So I just want to kind of keep an eyeball on that one. Committee updates. Each of you on your committees.
Just the Affordable Housing Trust, we met last Monday. And again, we had a couple minor things to deal with, but the major one was the two large pieces of land that are available, one off Great Western and one off the paper road of Old Townhouse. 10-acre lots don't come up in Yarmouth, and a lot of people from around the region are really interested. And of course, Mary Wagon, God love her, said, let's put it in for affordable housing. And we put in our 2 cents and hope it'll come about. But I think the town's going to do the right thing and put it out for bid. And I think somebody's going to bid high, and the town is going to have a win-win on their hand, whatever he or she is going to build.
Okay, great. Any other committee reports? Will?
I've got two, Madam Chair. The first one is the school building committee. There is now an approved bidder. I will not go through again my favorite word, mishigas, that went on in the last 2 weeks. If any of you have heard about the lowest bidder, then there was some communication from an outside party about the lowest bidder. So there was 2 meetings within 4 days, one to approve the lowest bidder or accept them, then to rescind them, then to recommend the second lowest bidder, which has now been ratified by the full school committee, which means TLDR, they're starting to work on the darn school, as I've been telling you and promising you and wishing and praying. It is happening. So the occupancy, Madam Chair, is expected to be right after Christmas vacation of 22-23. And another time we can talk about why Christmas vacation and not September, but I'm not going to do that tonight. But I can trust me when I tell you it's for good reason. So I think it would behoove us, because that's another word I like to use whenever I can, to maybe notice or take a little peek around the corner when you drive by now Station Avenue Elementary School, because I expect that you will start to see tree clearing and you will start to see large machines doing things to get the site ready. And that is something to acknowledge and to be celebrated, Madam Chair, given where we have been in the last 4 years since I joined the school building committee. let's see. Oh, I should say, from a town level, there will be, a group of citizens working, to make sure that change orders and like the week to week, day to day, month to month stuff is happening, but you'll start to see that school. Second thing is I am now taking off my virtual headset, putting on my other one, which is a member of the library planning committee. Yes, the library planning committee, one of my favorites. And I will offline communicate with, I believe Tom is on the land disposition committee as part of his service on the planning board.
Yes, he is.
But I can tell you that the library planning committee is intrigued by the opportunity to possibly look at some town-owned land in our very town and to understand in a little bit of a better way what is unrestricted, what is swappable, those kinds of things. And without making any waves at all, I will just say that Kathy, I will give you a heads up that I'm just going to reach out in the next day or two, just so I can educate myself a little bit more, because there's a little bit of confusion from the library planning committee about even how to go about learning about parcels that are available. We did get a very nice spreadsheet from the DPW that shows all the town-owned parcels. Parsing through that would require a little more help. But Madam Chair, the reason I'm bringing it up is because this idea that visioning is also connected to what is a library. As you can imagine, the concept of a library, even before the pandemic, before the libraries process was starting, as they were starting to look for state funding, the idea of a community center that has a library, or a library that's a community center, is now all sort of caught up in our post-pandemic world, not to mention this visioning process. So I just wanted to say, on a practical level, I would like to reach out to Kathy so I can help educate the library planning folks. And on a big picture level, it's kind of fun to see all these plates spinning in the air and trying not to drop them. Thank you.
Thank
I
you,
have
Will.
spoken to Linda Callahan. and
Yes, I
provided her-
apologize.
okay.
She did mention that. And so we just agreed to agree that it would just make more sense for me, because you and I are BFFs, that we just talk about this and then Linda
Sure.
doesn't have to worry about it.
Yes, Susan.
Will, why are they looking at town-owned parcels? Are they going to build a new library?
Well, I'd say, long story short, Susan, is the South Yarmouth and West Yarmouth libraries are in close to a similar situation as some of our schools, where to bring them compliant into the 21st century would require the kind of investment that at that point you would start thinking seriously about a single or possibly two small new libraries.
Well, I wouldn't. I would fight to the death for my West Yarmouth
Well,
library.
of course, I've never heard this. I've never heard
Point.
such passion before about a library. Come on. I mean, of course, I get it. But what I'm saying is, literally, we're at the same crossroads. And so
Yep.
it's not so much about whether it has to go on town-owned land. It's just about what's the path of least resistance, which, of course, as soon as I say those words, is the biggest oxymoron in the history of the world. So, as already expressed by my very faithful patron of the West Yarmouth Library. So, don't get me started. I moved to a town where 3 years after I moved here, one of the libraries seceded from the Union. Okay. I've never, so like, we have a Yarmouth Library in Yarmouthport that is not even part of the Yarmouth Library system. But this is not a library committee meeting. So, Madam Chair, thank you for indulging me.
You're welcome. Any other committee reports? I have one from Community and Economic Development. We met on March 25th, and Kathy joined us at that. And we've reallocated some additional funding from the tourism fund to support some additional expenses that are needed at the drive-in site for our consultant there to continue to do work on establishing what the needs are, to try to get that up and running for something as soon as possible. So we did make that reallocation. And we do have the availability, because so many tourist-like events have been canceled, and therefore funding for things last year simply could not be drawn down. We also had just a small item. We also approved funding for the Poor Little sign at the Chamber of Commerce Rec Department that's on one leg. So we're going to get a new sign there pretty soon. That will look like.
I thought it was a three-legged stool, Madam Chair. I
No, this
swear
is a-
that's the theme of
This
this.
is a one-legged sign.
Oh, boy.
And it will look similar to the signage standards that we have over here at the park at Bass River and at other spots. So
Julian,
those were a couple of things that we took care of there. Yes, Susan?
it's not the electronic sign, is it?
No, it's actually beyond that, just by one of the entrances on 28. The actual entrance on 28, the sign is there, green and white, old and tippy,
Mhm.
broken.
Okay.
So that's my report out on CEDC. Any other board member items? Okay. Kath, correspondence?
Sorry, Madam Chair. I just want to say I kind of missed Tom tonight, and I don't know what happened, and I was a little late, so I hope he's okay. I don't know what the deal is, but I just miss him. I'm going to say it.
He's at Finance Committee to talk about his
Wait,
petitioned
what?
article.
Yeah, he has his,
He had other
We have
hat.
we have important business to do here
yeah,
tonight.
but his ATM article is very important to
Yes,
him.
ma'am. I'm sorry. I forgot. Okay.
Anyway, Kathy, any staff or correspondence updates? Town administrator started this week. I met him via Zoom at last night's selectmen's meeting.
Yep.
And Joanne, that letter was lovely. Thank you for sending
Oh,
that to the town
oh.
administrator. Thank you.
You're welcome. It was Kathy's hand for sure.
Oh, it has the nice wording from Joanne. She made it so much friendlier.
I believe the term is ghost written. That is the appropriate term.
Yeah, the ghostwriter, I guess.
She added a lot of good
He's
parts,
not my
so.
boss. I'm not sucking up to him, so it's okay.
She did a better job sucking up than I did.
Yeah. Okay. Did you have anything, Kathy, for us at all
Just,
that you need to?
I think I sent out the email that, the growth incentive zone, the Board of Selectmen, I'm sorry, Brad, did agree to have us submit to the Cape Cod Commission for the 10-year extension. So we'll be sending that in. And there'll be some type of public meeting at some point, not a public hearing. And it went extremely smoothly. Joanne did a great job giving a brief presentation and immediately went into a motion to approve. So.
Yeah, Tracy Post jumped right on that. I was really happy to see that.
Former
Okay,
planning board
with-
member.
Yeah.
Susan? Yes?
Ask Kathy a question. Kathy, what was the ultimate disposition on the health board and the cigarette licensing? What did they finally decide to do?
The Board of Health?
No, the Board of Health, I think this has had something about a petition in front of the selectmen to issue a license to sell cigarettes at whatever's going to go at Great Island Plaza. Did that come up? I thought that was on the agenda.
No, it wasn't on the agenda.
Okay.
The last I heard is that they were asking the Board of Health to lift their restriction on it.
And the Board of Health's recommendation to the selectmen was it not be lifted.
Okay.
And so I don't know what the selectmen did at that point.
It wasn't on the agenda last night.
Okay, good enough. Okay.
Okay, and with that, may I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Roll call?
You don't get money for every single time you second a motion, Will.
I know, it's just procedural fun times. Susan, before I forget, since we are in discussion on the motion, Madam Chair, technically, Susan, I am allowed to send you a private message am I allowed to send a message to Susan in the chat while we're Zooming?
Yes.
If so,
But-
Susan,
but Will, I wouldn't know how to get it.
no, I know. That's why I wanted to say literally, Susan, there's a chat button. It says there's a number 2 next to it now, a red. Yeah, click on that.
Okay.
Which is library chat that I didn't think we needed to take the committee's time with.
Okay.
Thank you.
Gotcha.
I'd like
Thank
to
you,
take-
Madam.
You're
All right.
welcome. Roll call, Susan Britta,
Aye.
Brad Goodwin,
Aye.
Liz Hartsgrove,
Aye.
Will Rubenstein,
Aye.
Chris Vincent,
Aye.
Joanne Crowley, aye. Thank you all. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. Good job.
Thank
Thank
you.
you, Kath.
Thank you for all the input. Much appreciated.
Thank you,
We'll
Madam
see what we
Chair.
get next time.
Kath, I'll be in touch.
Okay.
All right.
Thank you,
I'll
Joanne.
help you on this.
All right.
I'll be